with it.
Hello, welcome to part 2 of my movie review for the film The Great Ziegfeld of 1936. I want to go ahead and do a small correction, so the squirrels humbly request your many apologetic misinformation, nuts, whatever. I had accidentally misquoted the date of death for Flo Ziegfeld. He had passed away in 1932, not 1934. I had so many different dates in there. I think I just crisscrossed some of the numbers, so I do apologize for that. It's not a huge difference, but it does. Either way, prior to this film, he had passed away, and that is the bigger point of it. So this film came out many years after he had passed, and I wanted to kind of give a preface to his autobiography information, because that's what this film is about the great stage producer, manager, talent scout, a little bit of everything. He had an eye for creativity and for productions. Not so good with the finances, however, which the film does go over quite a bit, about how well loved he was, but not well thought out as far as long-term goals. But let's go ahead and dip into this film a little bit. So the Great Ziegfeld film came out in 1936. This film was huge at the time. Now, he had already passed away in 1932, so he wasn't around to see this production. I think he would have been very proud of it, the amount of work and detail placed in the film. But this movie did go on to win 3 Oscars. It won for Best Picture, it won for Best Actress in a Leading Role, which was Luise Rainer, and Best Dance Direction for the song A Pretty Girl Is Like a Melody. There also was 4 Oscar nominees for Best Director, Best Writing Original Story, Best Art Direction, and Best Film Editing. So we're going to go ahead and kind of go over the history. This film was a massive box office thing going on at the time, because it was a rarity to go and see a show. Now, this was released abroad as well, so I have some posters here from when it was in France released, which it did phenomenal over there as well. And the film itself is a credit to itself in 1936, I must say. Now, it received rave reviews. Here's an interesting side note here, is that this film says it has $6.60 shows in one, as far as 300 plus girls, 50 stars, 12 song hits. It actually, in this particular ad, it shows you all the songs that are included in this film. The film ran about 2 hours and 50 something minutes, almost full 3 hours, which was rare for most films back then. So this was quite the treat for a lot of audiences. So they were more than willing to pay up to $4 to go see this production, which was a lot of money back then. So people were paying about $2.20, $2.50 on an average, but in some cities it was around $4. I saw it varied. Now, the first actor playing the lead role of Florenz, or Flo Ziegfeld, is the renowned actor William Powell. Now, William Powell has a very familiar face. You might have seen him in several different films. Maybe not so much in a lead role. Maybe you have in some lead roles from the 30s and 40s. But as he got into like the 1950s and 60s, he had smaller side roles, but was a very recognizable face and voice. So the first film that he was very popular for was the 1934 The Thin Man, which was kind of like a crime comedy drama in a sense, and it was a lot of fun. He played opposite Myrna Loy in this film. He was also known for My Man Godfrey, which came out in 1936, and the Song of the Thin Man in 1947. Also in 1947, My Life with Father was released, and another film that he was seen in a little bit in the background, but people immediately recognized him, was How to Marry a Millionaire with Marilyn Monroe, Betty Grable, and Lauren Bacall. Now, one thing I have to mention is that Powell was part of a rarity for its time, a popular, comedy crime movie series, The Thin Man in 1934, and then after The Thin Man, 1936, Another Thin Man, 1939, and Song of the Thin Man in 1947, all of which Powell plays opposite his co-star here in The Great Ziegfeld, Myrna Loy. I thought it was a very interesting thing, because back then that wasn't a very common, I guess, not a common thing to see sequels I know in the 80s they just took off with like Rambo, Indiana Jones. So whether the stories were separate or they were continuations of one another, that wasn't something that was very common in movies. So this was a very successful series opposite his co-star, Myrna Loy. Now, I know as far as our man here, Mr. Powell, he was never officially a winner of an Oscar, but he was nominated for 3 films. Life with Father got him a nomination in 1948. I do recommend that film. It's quite good. It's a tearjerker, but it's nothing too crazy. It's actually quite funny. There's a lot of funny parts to it, but it's just about the life of a father with so many children around the turn of the century. It's a very well done film. 1937, he got a nomination for Best Actor in a Leading Role for My Man Godfrey, another well done film. And then 1935, he received a nomination for the Thin Man series, but he did not win. He does have a Hollywood Walk of Fame star. He received in 1960, and that's on Vine Street there in L.A. So here we are moving on to his co-star, Miss Myrna Loy, who is by far a really beautiful actress, but also very multi-talented. She did receive 1 Oscar. She won it in 1991, an honorary one, just in recognition of her extraordinary qualities both on and off screen, with appreciation for a lifetime's worth of indelible performances. She wasn't present to receive it at the time, but she did give her acceptance speech via satellite from her home in Manhattan. Now, you might recognize her from her name alone, definitely sticks out, but people aren't always sure what films that she's best known for. But I kind of went ahead too fast because that's what I do. But one of the first films that she's well known for is Mr. Baldings Builds His Dream House in 1948. The Thin Man series, which we've talked about already, 1934 to 1947. And The Best Years of Our Lives in 1946. This film I highly recommend. It is about, if you give you a short synopsis, a group of people that come back after World War II to find that their lives that they had left before as, more innocent-minded, had permanently changed due to the war. And it was very well done, and I highly recommend that if you can, do take a moment to find this film and watch it. It deserves all the credit for the performances that you do see in the film. But Miss Myrna Loy is definitely a recognizable golden age actress, but at the same time, she continued to work all the way through until her passing. And here she is opposite of him in the Thin Man series, and I have not been able to sit down and watch all of them, which is my goal. Before the end of this month, I definitely will be watching all of these films. But moving on to our next actress in the film, playing the role of, because Miss Myrna Loy is playing the role of Billy Burke, which is his wife in the film, and that is an actual person who we will get to in a moment, of course. But in the role playing the Miss Anna Held is the very much beautiful and talented actress Luise Rainer. She was a rising star of her time, and she was very popular from the 1930s to 40s. However, she rejected many roles offered to her and opted to retire from acting due to her disenchantment with the Hollywood scene. So Rainer considered herself an actress, not a superficial model. She is known for her work in the film The Good Earth, 1937, The Great Waltz in 1938, and The Toy Wife in 1938 as well. She did pass away in 2014 at the age of 104. But one interesting fact about Miss Rainer is that she did win 2 Oscars. She became the first actress and first performer to win consecutive awards for lead roles. She won in 1938 for Best Actress in a Leading Role, The Good Earth. I highly recommend that film. And also 1937 she won an award for this film, The Great Ziegfeld, and Best Actress in a Leading Role. So that's a very interesting fact about her. Now, moving on here into this picture, you see to the left William Powell. You see a young lady standing up there, but there's an older gentleman between the two of them standing up. That man has a very familiar face, and you might have seen him. He plays the rival, Jack Billings, in this film of The Great Ziegfeld, but the actor's name is Frank Morgan. Now, he has a matching voice that's very familiar. The moment you hear it, we all go, wait a minute, I've heard this guy before. But that's because he played, you might recognize him as Professor Marvel, or the doorman, or maybe the man behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. He played the wizard in the classic 1939 film, The Wizard of Oz. Now, another familiar face that's also found in the Great Ziegfeld is a superb dancer and performer. This scene alone absolutely blows my mind, so if you do have a moment, sit down and watch this film, because you'll see a lot of full productions, full performances of songs and numbers, and it goes on for a good 30 minutes in some cases, and it's absolutely worth sitting down and watching it. But this actor in the middle with the bow tie on, you might recognize him because he's been in several films, but he's most familiar as playing the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. But this is Roy Bogler, and here he is dancing with Judy Garland and the Cowardly Lion. But he actually is a phenomenal dancer, and I think well underappreciated for the talent that he had. There was a lot of vaudevillians that came in, but he had also been in the Follies, so he's playing himself in this film. Now, this photo here is of Miss Billie Burke with the actress who is playing her in the film. Miss Myrna Loy is playing Billie Burke in The Great Ziegfeld in the pink. So the gal to the right, or excuse me, the gal to the left with the red hair is Miss Billie Burke. Now, you might recognize her, but she's a very talented and phenomenal actress who worked many years on stage, and you might recognize her face. At first, you may not. You might be like, oh, I've seen her somewhere. I just don't know where. This is when she was quite younger. But she was the real-life wife of Flo Ziegfeld, and together they had a little girl, and they lived happily until his passing in 1932. Now, she was known for playing Glinda the Good Witch in the Wizard of Oz film. The thing about that is quite amazing about the Wizard of Oz is how many familiar names, like Jack Haley is an example, and he's done numerous work, but all of these casted members, whether they were in small roles or large roles, had been working in vaudevillian and theaters and productions, and many came from the Ziegfeld arena of that top shelf performances on theater and stage, Broadway, so on. But the Wizard of Oz brought a lot of these individuals together, and I thought it was interesting how it all interconnects. But it was nice to see Billie there, Billie Burke, because she is quite a talented actress. Most theater, I think, actors and actresses have something that most, let's say, average screen actors don't have anymore. I would argue it could be numerous things. We're not going to get into that. But anyway, The Great Ziegfeld, we are going to go into my review of it. Now, okay, with such a stunning cast of former vaudevillians, actors, performers with dance and singing, The Great Ziegfeld promised audiences an extraordinary opportunity to experience those amazing years that the Ziegfeld Follies had. So when you went into this experience, I wasn't sure what I was anticipating, because I went in kind of a little half-cocked. Let's be honest, man. I don't know what I'm going to be watching. I've never saw the Ziegfeld Follies in real life. Obviously, I'd be 100 and something if I had. But I knew that it was like quite the spectacle. It was like a bit of circus and a bit of performance art, and the costuming and the set designs. All of this was something to be considered. But I didn't know what I was going to be watching. There's a lot of wonderful performances by each individual actor. But upon first glance, excuse me, I'm so sorry, with such a numerous people, I didn't really know what I was going to see when I walked into this, like sitting down watching this 3-hour movie. I was like, okay, if I can get through this, I'll be good. I didn't know if I was going to be wooed, because truth is, time has passed. I mean, with entertainment and theater over the years, there really hasn't been something we haven't already seen. Certainly with the development of new technology and CGI, we've seen a bit of everything. But I think what this film offered was amazing performances, characters that you kind of start to care about. You start to find your security blankets within the film that you really want to see succeed, and you do have that. You feel yourself rooting for it. But at the same time, you also have this extraordinary experience of actually experiencing that stage and theater that the Ziegfeld Follies brought, and it was taking those pieces and bringing them to a theater audience like they never had before. And honestly, if this had been in Technicolor, I think it would have been amazing. But it was in black and white, but that certainly didn't take anything away from it. It superseded my expectations of what these performers could do. There are several full performances during this film, much of which is absolutely mind-blowing, with moving stages and acrobat acrobatics, I guess, and charming effects. And it's no wonder this film was like a box office hit with much less the former Ziegfeld productions. I mean, this was like this scene right here where you see these women standing on what look like beds. What it is it's a moving stage, and each section of beds is a moving piece of the stage. And these women are dancing with high kicks on top of these moving pieces in perfect harmony. They make the Rockettes look undermanaged. That's how insane this is, right? So the costuming is extraordinary. It's like having a bit of Vegas, and at the same time, it's you're kind of in awe of what type of artistry and time and detail was placed in this film. And there is a beauty to it because it is a fine art. The music, the performances, the singing, just the amount of detail placed into something as simple as a costume. They're bigger and larger and bigger than you could imagine. And it is like a moving piece of art. And I think that's what Ziegfeld was going for. It was not just an experience, but to bring some life into the world of having awe and stunning, and to leave a theater going, what the hell did I just see? And that's exactly what happened to his own audiences. And this film does a very good job of presenting this. This particular photo is of Fanny Brice. Now, what's funny about her is that she is a comedian, and this fan dance has been replicated in cartoons and in movies, and supposedly she's nude underneath those fans, which is not true. She's comedically making fun of it. Now, there were real places, like whether that be like in Moulin Rouge type of atmospheres, or those go-go girl clubs, or whatever the hell they called them back then. I don't know. But she made it into a comedic skit, and it is absolutely hilarious. That is also in this film. I highly recommend it because it's hilarious, and she's very expressive. And like as I had stated in my first video, Funny Girl is loosely based on her personality, the actual Broadway/film with Barbra Streisand that was in the 60s, based on this Miss Fanny Brice. So now we're looking at views behind the scenes of when they were shooting the production numbers, and this is actually in a theater, so you're starting to see some of the effects, and it's just mind-blowing, the amount of detail and time placed into this film. And there's a lot of these moving stages and all of these different girls, and you got the legs on the Ziegfeld Folly girls. I'm not going to take away your showgirls because they are absolutely gorgeous, but there's so much going on in this production number, just one, and then you have two, and then you have dozens of different things going on in one, and the interaction with the audience is quite amazing considering the time these productions were going on stage around the country. But yes, you will get your beautiful girls. Yes, you will get amazing set production and costuming, and yes, you will remember many of these performances well after you've seen the film, and you'll even remember some of these songs that you've heard prior, because in our society, that's how well these songs, I mean, you're talking about Irving Berlin songs and Hammerstein songs from Showboat. These are songs that in Oklahoma, all these, these different, not Oklahoma per se, but just, how songs stick in your head. You don't know where they come from, and you're like, who the hell sang that? Now you know that a lot of these things come from the stage and theater where it began. But I do believe that this film stands out on its own, even though it is in black and white. If any film should be re-released in color, it is The Great Ziegfeld. The acting is reminiscent of its era. However, with the production values and performances all around, it stands alone for its spectacular experience. And I do highly recommend this film. I give it 10 out of 10 nuts on this. I absolutely believe that this is one of those films that should be in your collection of, if you appreciate classic Hollywood, or you have an appreciation for the vaudevillian days of theater and acting and comedy and performance art and all these things, because that's how we got to where we're at. We wouldn't have probably had productions like Cats, okay, or Hamilton, or anything else that's in theater without the vaudeville days of bringing extraordinary performances to theaters, but also bringing it to audiences around the country. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for listening, and I hope all of you have a great night, and I will talk to you later, squirrel friends. Bye.
That's squirrelly.